Hello and good morning. My name is Amanat Ali and I am press counselor at the Pakistan mission to the UN. It is my pleasure to welcome you and thank you all for attending this briefing. You know, this briefing has been convened in the context of escalation in tensions in our region. Today we are joined by Ambassador Asim Iftikhar Ahmad, permanent representative of Pakistan to the UN. Ambassador will make a statement, and after the statement, the floor will be open for Q&A. Sir.
Thank you. Good morning, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. Let me begin by thanking all of you for joining for this briefing on a subject that I'm sure you would have been following closely. In view of the recent developments in South Asia and the growing regional tensions, including the looming threat of military escalation, it was important to provide an update on this evolving situation and to also provide you Pakistan's perspective. The unjustified actions and unilateral measures announced by the Indian government on 23rd April, followed by belligerent public statements, have significantly heightened tensions and pose a serious threat to regional peace and security. In this politically motivated and highly provocative environment created by India's irresponsible and destabilizing actions in the wake of the Pahalgam attack in the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, as we speak, there is reasonable intelligence indicating towards imminent threat of kinetic action by India against Pakistan. In response to these developments, we have briefed the UN Secretary General, the Presidents of the General Assembly and the Security Council, the OIC group in New York, many other fellow members of the Security Council, and we have also shared our position and concerns with various other international partners across the globe. Colleagues, India's conduct, marked by a disregard for international law and regional stability, is incendiary and dangerous, with the potential for far-reaching and disastrous consequences. Let me underline that Pakistan does not seek escalation. This has been made clear by the political leadership of Pakistan and at all levels. At the same time, we are fully prepared to defend our sovereignty and territorial integrity. Should India resort to aggression, Pakistan will exercise its inherent and legitimate right to self-defense as enshrined in the UN Charter. India's pattern of military adventurism is well known. Predictably, within moments of the recent attack, India began leveling unsubstantiated and misleading allegations against Pakistan without presenting any shred of evidence and without any credible investigation. Even 10 days after the incident, no credible information about the perpetrators has been made public or shared with us. Pakistan categorically rejects any attempt to associate it with the 22nd April terrorist incident in Pahalgam in the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Pakistan condemns terrorism in all its forms and manifestations. Nothing justifies targeting of innocent civilians. We are concerned over the loss of lives in the Pahalgam attack, and we have extended our condolences. As a victim of terrorism itself, no one can feel the pain of those impacted by this scourge, like Pakistan. Immediately after the incident, Pakistan constructively engaged within the Security Council with our fellow council members to put out a press statement condemning the attack in the strongest possible terms. On the other hand, In response to India's provocative and unilateral actions, Pakistan's National Security Committee, chaired by the Prime Minister, convened on 24th April and was obliged to undertake certain proportionate countermeasures. Of grave and particular concern to us is India's irresponsible decision to hold in abeyance the historic Indus Water Treaty of 1960, which is a landmark legally binding agreement brokered and guaranteed by the World Bank. The treaty guarantees Pakistan's right to the three western rivers, which serve as a lifeline for over 240 million people of Pakistan. Holding of the Indus Waters Treaty in abeyance is unilateral and illegal. There are no such provisions, in fact, in the treaty. India's unilateral and unlawful actions are bound to undermine regional peace and stability with catastrophic implications. Pakistan's National Security Committee has made it categorically clear that any attempt to stop or divert the natural flow of water that rightfully belongs to Pakistan in accordance with the provisions of this treaty and the usurpation of the rights of the lower riparian will be considered as an act of war. Such a move poses an existential threat to the people of Pakistan and will not be tolerated. In fact, if left unchecked by the international community, such actions risk setting in a dangerous precedent that could undermine the legal rights for lower riparian states, potentially triggering new global conflicts over shared water resources. It is unfortunate that India continues to weaponize terrorism and associate its unsubstantiated allegations as part of its disinformation strategy for political ends. In fact, this is now a familiar template aimed at diverting attention from India's inability to suppress the inalienable right of the Kashmiri people to self-determination, its security failures in the IIOJK, as well as its decades-long state terrorism and oppression targeting the Kashmiris. Colleagues, it goes without saying that it needs to be highlighted that the root cause of conflict and instability in South Asia is the long-standing Jammu and Kashmir dispute that remains unresolved for nearly 8 decades. Durable peace, in our view, will remain elusive until there is a just and lasting settlement to this core issue in accordance with the relevant UN Security Council resolutions and the wishes of the Kashmiri people. We are deeply concerned by reports of widespread human rights violations in the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, including in the wake of this incident, and that includes arbitrary detentions, home demolitions, and collective punishment that is being imposed on the innocent Kashmiri people. Pakistan desires good neighborly, peaceful, and cooperative relations with all its neighbors, including India. We advocate for a relationship grounded in mutual respect, sovereign equality, peaceful coexistence, and peaceful resolution of all outstanding disputes. But this aspiration must be reciprocated. It cannot be a one-sided affair. In conclusion, the situation unfolding in the region poses a serious threat to international peace and security. Pakistan has urged immediate de-escalation. We believe escalatory rhetoric and unilateral actions are counterproductive. Pakistan has acted with maturity and responsibility. Regional peace and security is a fundamental pillar of Pakistan's foreign policy, and Pakistan is deeply committed to this objective. We appreciate the efforts that have been undertaken by the UN Secretary General and many of our friends, in fact, common friends of India and Pakistan, calling for cooperation, dialogue, and de-escalation. We believe these efforts and outreach should continue because the situation remains very tense, and these efforts should in fact be intensified to prevent escalation and conflict. Escalation in South Asia, that's a region which is home to close to 2 billion people, favors none. It is time for sanity to prevail and to allow dialogue and diplomacy to prevent the situation from spiraling out of control. I thank you, and I am ready to take your questions and comments.
We are open for question and answer. Sharife. Sorry.
Thank you so much, and thank you, Ambassador, on behalf of the UN Correspondent Association for this press briefing. It's Valeria Robecco from ANSA Newswire. So my question is, are you planning to take this matter on the Security Council, meaning you planning to ask for a meeting, official meeting of the Security Council, and which action, which steps do you expect or do you seek from the United Nations? Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for your question. In fact, I mean, it's a question that is very pertinent in the sense that we see that all of this that is happening is in the context, in the backdrop of the situation in Jammu and Kashmir, which, as I mentioned, is a dispute which is yet to be resolved in accordance with the resolutions of the Security Council and the wishes of the Kashmiri people. Here, it is evident that there was an incident, but now what has evolved in terms of a situation which is a real threat to regional and international peace and security. And we believe that the Security Council, in fact, has the mandate, and it would be very legitimate for any member of the Council, including Pakistan, to request a meeting, a discussion of the Security Council to consider this very serious situation that has evolved. And we have discussed that with the Council members. We have discussed that with the previous last month's presidency and this month's presidency. We are observing the situation very closely, and we have the right to convene a meeting when we feel appropriate.
Sharif.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. I'm Sharif Chitin from Anadolu Agency. If I'm recalling correctly, Pakistan has called for an international investigation following the terrorist attack. So I would like to know what sort of reactions have you received to your call from around the world, and especially the United States, who's called for de-escalation. But how do you evaluate the US standing following this attack? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think what we have said in terms of a demand for credible, neutral, and independent investigation of this incident, it is very logical and it makes sense, because what you have seen, and this has been the past practice also, in the wake of such incidents, our neighbor, they are often seen as acting as the judge and the jury. So immediately following this incident, they were pointing fingers towards Pakistan, putting the blame on Pakistan, while there was no evidence, while there was not even a proper investigation that had been initiated. So our demand and our call for an independent, neutral investigation is in that context. We haven't heard, in terms of a positive response from the Indian side on this, and we hope that they would reply to this demand, because that would be a very essential element if we are going to unearth as to what happened, in this incident. Your remarks and your question about the role of the United States, we think it's very important. It has been important in the past, not least because US is an influential and a big country and a permanent member of the Security Council, but also because it has traditionally had good relations with both Pakistan and India, and it has played a role in the past. We believe it has an instrumental role to play in this instance also, and I would say not just tackling this incident which is currently facing us, but we believe, and we have been saying this, that the major countries, especially the permanent members of the Security Council, and that includes the US, of course, they need to do more. They need to put in that extra dedicated, concerted effort to try to resolve the Jammu and Kashmir dispute. And we have been reiterating that call. I think it's the responsibility of the Security Council and the permanent members to not let this dispute fester.
Mr. Talal.
Thank you. Talal Haj from Al Arabiya and Al Hadath news networks. I would like to ask about some statements from the Pakistani government. The government has stated that that you have evidence that an Indian attack will take place within the next 36 hours. Beside the massing of troops, the Indian troops and the Pakistani troops, can you share with us what evidence that convinces you that there's an attack coming within the next 36 hours? And also the statement that any attack or aggression by India will be met with a decisive, the word decisive response. When you say decisive, does that include any nuclear options? And last, concerning the Western Front, there are disruptive actions by the Afghan and Pakistani Taliban. Can Pakistan conduct two wars at the same time?
Thank you.
Thank you.
I would start by saying that Pakistan is a responsible member of the international community. Our response to this situation that has evolved is also reflective of a responsible member state, member of the United Nations. We have not done anything, not taken any action that would lead to escalation of the situation. It needs to be distinguished that all those actions, unilateral steps and measures are being taken from the Indian side. And I would not go into the realm of intelligence and sharing what kind of information led us to, warn the international community that a threat of kinetic action is imminent. By the way, you can trace as to what has been happening ever since this incident took place, the kind of statements that are there, and they are in the public realm, the preparations of the military forces, which have been given a go-ahead by the Indian Prime Minister, as happened in 2019 also, and some of the information that we have received from some other members as well as regards to the Indian intentions. So it is quite plausible that they are preparing for this kind of action. They did this in 2019 also. That's why we are warning that if there is any action of such kind, any aggression, then it will unleash a new momentum in which Pakistan will be obliged to respond. Because That's what happened in 2019 also. I'm not going to go beyond that. What kind of response will it be? But there will be a response. But what we need to remember is that there were some circumstances that led to the 2019 incident, and the action and the retaliatory action to subside and de-escalate. We are not sure that that kind of circumstances would be there this time. So that's why there is a need for more caution, because the situation is so explosive.
Dr. Syam.
Yeah, we have, I think we are not, that's not a cause for concern for us. The western borders are under total control. There's some counterterrorism and law enforcement operations that are going on there. I don't believe that that's going to have an impact in terms of our readiness and preparedness to counter anything that comes across the line of control in Kashmir.
Dr. Syam.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. Abdel Hamid Siam from the Arabic daily Al-Quds Al-Arabi. In 2008, after the Mumbai bombing, India immediately accused Pakistan of being behind this bombing. Shashi Tharoor was a senior UN official who ran for the post of Secretary General. He wrote an article saying, or entitled, Learning from Israel. He became Minister of State for Foreign Affairs. Apparently, that article became the policy of Prime Minister Modi, learning from Israel. Where do you see similarities between what Israel is doing in the West Bank and Gaza and what Modi government doing in occupied Jammu and Kashmir? Thank you.
Well, I think first of all, it's a question again of leveling allegations and then not being able to come up with credible evidence or proof to actually substantiate that what you said, it happened that way. So there is this thing that needs to be distinguished. I think you can draw many parallels. I'm not going to go into this. This is not the exercise of not the objective of my my briefing. But some of the obvious parallels that can be drawn with regard to the situation in the occupied Palestinian territories and the Indian-occupied Jammu and Kashmir is that both are questions of continuing illegal occupation, and both are questions of self-determination, and both are questions of that principle of self-determination which formed the basis of the framework that the United Nations and the Security Council provided for the resolution of those disputes. And those resolutions have not been implemented. So I think that's the main context. That's the parallel which is there, that there is this legitimate demand, struggle for self-determination, legitimate struggle in the sense that it is guaranteed and promised by the resolutions of the Security Council, and there is a continued illegal occupation that is in the process of suppressing that movement for self-determination.
Mr. Ahmad, followed by Iftikhar sir.
Thank you, Ambassador, for the briefing. This is Ahmad Fathi, ATN News. A little bit apart from the legal status of Jammu and Kashmir, I asked the spokesperson of the Secretary General yesterday about the Secretary General willing to go to the region and start to mediate a possible solution between the parties. He said that he spoke with Mr. Shahbaz Sharif, Prime Minister of Pakistan, and Mr. Narendra Modi, Prime Minister of India, and he offered his good offices. does your Prime Minister willing to accept the Secretary General good offices to try to mediate a solution for this ongoing crisis that we've been captured by? And as you said, it's affecting already 2 billion people in South Asia. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you very much. Very pertinent question. I think I mentioned, not directly, but I pointed out to the important role of the Secretary General in terms of his mandate and responsibilities within the context of the Charter itself. This preventive role that is there for the Secretary General. I can tell you that Pakistan has always welcomed and has indeed encouraged and asked for the Secretary General, not Mr. Guterres, but all the Secretary Generals that have preceded him, to play that role. And we have always said that we are ready and willing to accept the good offices role of the Secretary General. That's our position even now. I have met the Secretary General twice during this week. I met him yesterday. The Prime Minister received his call. As you know, that the Secretary General spoke to our Prime Minister and the Indian Foreign Minister. The Prime Minister reiterated our expectation that the Secretary General will play his good offices and offer his good offices role. I believe that the Secretary General is very willing to do that. We have also in fact encouraged and requested the Secretary General to visit the region. That would mean both India and Pakistan, and we would be very happy. In fact, we want him to play that role and visit the region, and we would welcome him because I think it will be very important in the current circumstances.
Iftikhar sir, followed by Linda.
My colleague Ahmad just dropped the question I was going to ask.
Okay. Linda.
Thank you, Linda Fasulo, NPR. My question is, we know that Secretary of State Rubio spoke with your country's Prime Minister and with the Foreign Minister of India, I believe. Do you know what role China is playing in terms of, I know China is an ally, have they been in touch with your leadership and as well as India? And finally, do you think it's time, or the time is approaching, where perhaps President Trump might get involved?
Thank you. You mentioned yourself the context that have been made by the Trump administration, and I would say that it is at various levels. The Secretary of State has made contacts. We are in touch here in New York, also in Islamabad and Washington. I believe the Indian side is also in touch. So we welcome these contacts. We think that, and there are other contacts and outreach by many other countries, but there is a sense that the impact that is desirable, especially on the Indian side, to de-escalate is not yet there. So that's why we're saying that there is a need to intensify. I mean, these contacts should be frequent, concerted, with a serious messaging that needs to go out, that there is a need to de-escalate. So we welcome the continuation of these contacts. China also has a role. Obviously, China is very close to Pakistan, a strategic partner. And we know that their messaging is also similar. They also like to have the situation de-escalated and resolved peacefully. As for Mr. Trump playing a role, I don't want to jump into it, but I think any positive and constructive mediatory role that can come in and help the two parties move forward towards a resolution of the Jammu and Kashmir dispute in accordance with international legitimacy, that I mean the resolutions of the Security Council and the wishes of the Kashmiri people, we welcome that.
And what level has the Chinese involvement been? I mean, at presidential level, or? in terms of who's been involved from China?
There have been contacts. I mean, on our side at the ministerial level, and also at other diplomatic levels. Yes.
Georgia.
Thank you, Ambassador. Georgia Garangiotti, Athens News Agency. There have been reports of fierce dogfights between the Indian and Pakistani air forces. So what is the situation on the field, I mean in the region in Jammu Kashmir, on the borderline? And are there any diplomatic channels with India or not? Thank you.
So you mentioned dogfights?
Yeah.
Recent?
Yeah. It has been reported. I
No.
read it in the morning.
Okay. I mean, if there's something very recent while we were coming here, I'm not aware. But we don't have that kind of information. I think there were some reports about some quadcopters or drones, shot down or something. But as I said, if the situation deteriorates and some kind of kinetic action comes into play, this kind of a situation, a scenario is very much possible. We saw that happen in 2019. It was a very dangerous escalation. We do not want a repeat of that. That's why I am emphasizing the need for these preventive actions, preventive diplomacy, and dialogue to calm down and de-escalate.
Colleague from Press Trust of India.
Ambassador Yoshita Singh with Press Trust of India. Recently, the Pakistani Defense Minister Khwaja Asif in an interview admitted and confessed to Pakistan's long-standing history of supporting, training, and funding terrorist organizations. To quote, he said, "We have been doing this dirty work for decades for the West." J.D. Vance, the US Vice President, also said that Pakistan should cooperate with India to make sure that terrorists operating in their territory are hunted down and dealt with. What is your response to these remarks coming from senior Pakistani leaders saying that, admitting to having terrorists operating on their soil, Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, this is I thank you for your question. Obviously, there are occasions and repeated occasions where comments and statements are twisted and presented out of context. But if you're going into statements and, the track record of both sides in terms of what kind of public statements are available with regard to the activities of the two governments on counterterrorism, terrorism itself, you would note that there are lots of questions that our friends, our eastern neighbor, need to answer. For example, there's a whole history of false flag, stage managed operations by India in the past, state sponsorship of sabotage and terrorism abroad in Pakistan, and now it has gone beyond the region, extraterritorial assassinations, even in North America, that have been revealed and documented. So that's there. There have been instances reported also where senior Indian officials, including the National Security Advisor, the Ministers of Defense and Home Affairs, they've repeatedly made inflammatory statements in public, highlighting their agenda, sometimes of occupying Azad Jammu and Kashmir, sometimes annihilating Pakistan itself, often indicating their desire to destabilize Balochistan through state-sponsored terrorism. So, I mean, the list is long. The point is that India has used over the period of years this bogey of terrorism, presented itself as a victim of terrorism, while Pakistan itself is the biggest victim of terrorism. So they have used this, they have abused this actually to promote certain political objectives. I can recall, for example, the February 2019 incident happened, and the way it was misused by India 6 months down the road, coming up with those illegal and unilateral actions to abrogate and cancel the special status of Jammu and Kashmir, which unleashed a whole new series of problems between India and Pakistan. All of that in violation of UN Security Council resolutions on Jammu and Kashmir. And it seems that this current incident, the moment it happens, and the next day you see a unilateral putting into abeyance of the Indus Water Treaty, totally unlawful. So it's the use or abuse of such incidents to promote the special political objectives of India that is very, very worrisome, and I think the international community needs to take serious note of this behavior.
Yes. Anyone? Yes, please.
Just a follow-up on that, you've listed this whole line, but we all know that Hafiz Saeed, he's a UN-designated terrorist. He still enjoys security in Pakistan. Osama bin Laden was found in Pakistan, so it's easy, it's convenient, but we all know the track record that Pakistan has had of having its soil used against India for terrorist attacks. The 26/11 attacks, the terrorists came from Pakistan, so we all know that history.
Well, this is the kind of discussion I would like to avoid, because I can go on in responding to that. These allegations, many of these allegations are never proven. You mentioned some names. There are some names who are listed even in the UN sanctions committee listings, and Pakistan has taken effective action against those individuals. India often refers to some entities which are defunct entities, no more operational. That's besides the fact. The point is that India itself has used terrorism as a weapon of state policy, and it has worked at different levels. Internally, within India, inside Indian-occupied Jammu and Kashmir, state-sponsored terrorism, and then exporting this terrorism to neighboring countries. And Pakistan has been a primary victim of that policy of state-sponsored terrorism by India. There are many incidents that we have shared credible evidence that there were links that were going back to India, financing, supporting, abetting. I don't want to go into details, but various incidents in Pakistan, particularly in Balochistan and other parts of Pakistan, can be traced back to India. So this is a long list. I think the purpose here is to discuss the threat to regional peace and security, and that's why we are here. I have stated very clearly that we have great interest in preserving the peace and stability in South Asia. If India thinks that terrorism is an issue, it is an even bigger issue for us, and we are prepared to discuss that bilaterally. If India is prepared to sit across the table, there can be a discussion on terrorism also, and that used to be the case when we had this comprehensive dialogue process going. So when there is a dialogue, every issue can be discussed. And if there are grievances on one side, there will be grievances on the other side. But the only way to discuss, to address that, is through dialogue. That dialogue is not there, unfortunately, not because of us, but because India has shunned that dialogue.
Yes, please.
Yes.
Followed by...
Thank you, Ambassador Murad Hashim from Al Jazeera Arabic. You said that the suspension of the Indus Water Treaty will lead to implications for the regional stability. Could you elaborate more and specifically on the bilateral relations with India? What are the impacts is going to be? And I have another question. Also, you mentioned at the beginning of this press conference that there are widespread of human rights violations in the Indian-administered Kashmir. Could you elaborate more on that, and what do you want from the UN specifically on this issue? Thank you.
Thank you. I think on the Indus Water Treaty, as I mentioned, this is a landmark treaty which actually determined the sharing of what is in fact rivers of the Indus river basin. There are 6 rivers in Indus river basin, of which 3 eastern rivers were given to India and 3 western rivers were given to Pakistan, with some provisions for utilization of the water of those rivers, which are in accordance with the provisions of the Indus Water Treaty. So you can imagine that Pakistan, which is an agrarian economy, a large majority of the population depending on agriculture, and a large part of our agriculture is based on river waters. So we are a 240 million large population. You can imagine that in the long run, the kind of consequences that can be there for Pakistan, which is already a water scarce country, if the provisions of the Indus Water Treaty are not complied with, and India goes the other way of having projects which it has done in the past, some major projects which were not in line, the designs of those projects were not in line with the provisions and requirements of the treaty. So if we go that route, in the long run, it is going to have serious consequences for Pakistan, for the people of Pakistan, for the society of Pakistan. So that's why you see that the National Security Committee has said that if India actually tries to stop or divert the flow of waters of these 3 rivers, it will be constituted as an act of war. So it's a serious issue. That's why we have mentioned this. We are going to agitate this, raise this at the appropriate forums, and we hope, in fact, that reason will prevail and that India will revert this unilateral announcement of putting this treaty into abeyance, because I think this is a fundamental treaty that is governing some of the crucial aspects of diplomatic and bilateral relations between our 2 countries. It has withstood the test of time. It has withstood adversarial moments, even wars, and we believe that it would make sense for India to revert this action. You mentioned about the human rights violations in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. That has been a long-standing problem. This is one aspect of the whole situation of Jammu and Kashmir, which is a territorial dispute, it's a political dispute, but there are the humanitarian and human rights dimensions of this dispute, which are directly impacting the daily lives of the Kashmiri people for many years now. And this situation has been documented by international human rights organizations, Human Rights Watch, Amnesty. There you have 2 major reports of the High Commissioner for Human Rights on the situation of human rights in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. So there is a whole list of documentation that is available. There is this reign of terror which is there on the Indian side of Kashmir. In the wake of this particular incident, there are reports that they have gone ahead and bulldozed without trial the homes of the Kashmiri people, which they said was suspected. There have been arrests under vague terror charges, daily harassment under pretext of counterterrorism. So there's a whole lot of actions that have been there in recent years: extrajudicial killings, this use of pellet guns, rape as a weapon of war, persecution of women, in particular targeted attacks against girls. It's a whole list, and that's why I think if you start this discussion, and if you have this kind of discussion that was pointing out towards Pakistan, and with regard to terrorism and counterterrorism, I can say that we are ready. And we have done it so many times in the past, and we can hold out this mirror to our neighbor as to what has been their track record with regard to terrorism and human rights.
Yes, please.
Thank you, Ambassador, for your press briefing. My name is Yu from Kyodo News, Japanese news agency. I have two questions. One is simple, to be more clear, about good office by Secretary General. So have you responded to Secretary General officially? And then secondly, what do you think about the nuclear risk? And then do you think Pakistan and India need nuclear disarmament? Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for those two questions. On the first, I think I was pretty clear and I explained in detail. We welcome, and it's an unconditional offer and welcome to the Secretary General's offer of good offices. In fact, if you had a different question, you can clarify. Yeah.
Did you respond officially to the Secretary General? Did you answer to the Secretary General?
Yeah. In fact, I can tell you that we invited him to play that role. And even in my recent meeting with the SG, and this is what the Prime Minister also conveyed to the SG, that we accept and we welcome his role, and we have in fact suggested to him to visit the region. So that means we have officially accepted. We wanted to encourage him to play that role. So obviously we will accept. And on your other question, I deliberately did not mention that. Everyone knows that Kashmir is often termed as a nuclear flashpoint, but I believe that Pakistan is a responsible nuclear weapon state. I assume that India also exhibits that same kind of responsibility, and we should not contemplate a situation that would move in that direction.
Yes, please.
Hello, Mr. Ambassador. Thank you so much for the briefing. This is Ahmed Ali speaking on behalf of Sphinx News TV. It has been alleged that prior to the attacks on the Indian-administered Kashmir region, India has administered thousands of permits for the settling of Hindus into the region. Kashmiri residents have expressed public condemnation for this since the revocation of Article 370 in 2019. Does this somewhat recent development have any relevance to any pre-existing escalating tension between India and Pakistan prior to the attacks? Or to your knowledge, was there any progressive dialogue between both the Pakistani and Indian administration about this? Thank you.
Thank you. I think what you mentioned is part of those problems that I was referring to in terms of I was focusing on the human rights issues, but it's very pertinent to come back to the actions, the illegal and unilateral actions that India took on 5th of August 2019. And the primary purpose of those actions was to undermine the internationally recognized disputed status of Jammu and Kashmir, and eventually they showed through their other measures that they instituted that they were in fact going for this demographic change of demographic composition of the disputed territory, which in fact is in violation of the relevant Geneva Conventions. So this is something that they have been doing. There are credible reports of the Indian administration in the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, of actually issuing certificates, domicile certificates to non-residents, which was never possible before the revocation of those the constitutional provisions. This is a serious, action that not only violates the relevant Security Council resolutions, but it puts into jeopardy, because if you are altering the demographic composition of a territory whose final status is yet to be determined according to the UN resolutions by a referendum or a plebiscite under the UN auspices. So changing of this demographic composition is very, very serious. And so from that perspective, it's one of the many escalatory steps that India has taken since August 2019. And it is all contributing to the, to the very precarious situation that is there on the Indian side of Kashmir. I mean, the Kashmiris are totally disgruntled. I mean, the India might do all that it can to project that, there is normalcy and things are, back to normal, but, that's not the case. Basically, it seems to us that they've totally alienated. So Kashmiris on the Indian side of Kashmir are totally alienated from this occupation, and so it seems to me that they've lost the Indians have lost the battle of hearts and minds in Kashmir. This is very, very important.
So since we have come to the close of our deadline, so one quick question.
A follow-up on my colleague from Kyoto about the nuclear disarmament. What is Pakistan's doctrine about the use of nuclear weapons, and especially for the point of first use? Thank you, sir.
Yeah, it's a stated policy. I mean, it's Pakistan's, policy on nuclear disarmament, non-proliferation, and all the related issues is in the public realm. And it's very well known. Thank you.
I thank you, ladies and gentlemen.